Hi, Brent. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is doing great. I have two questions. The first question is I've been having some spontaneous orgasms throughout the day and in the evenings, and I'm just wondering if you could further explain um, why this is happening. And the second question I have is with our Kundalini. Does it help us get into a higher consciousness? Does the energy help us? And the reason why I ask is my mind has been like on this hamster wheel, and one specific um, thing that's just keeps coming up, and when I thought I've healed it or released the negative thoughts, it just comes back again with a vengeance. So I was just wondering if you could further explain that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So maybe I can ask a follow-up question. With the spontaneous orgasms, do they have a sort of a different feeling to a traditional orgasm? Is there anything unique about them?
Yeah, I find that it's so much more blissful and it just doesn't end. I have that feeling, that pleasurable feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
I
it's not
do
a,
want to sorry, I just want to add too, last night something also happened where I was sleeping and I experienced like this the golden light. I don't know, it was just so bright. It was just so yellow. And and then I ended up waking up. So just kind of strange things like that are happening.
okay. So thank you. Yes, this is not something unheard of. Of course, it's quite a great benefit, you could say. So those who maybe haven't experienced such a thing and are having a hard time, uh, we're here for you as well. But for those having spontaneous orgasms, extreme bliss, sustained for a long period of time, it's pretty incredible. You use the word higher consciousness. So one way of looking at this is that there is the traditional orgasm, maybe you could say induced by, mundane sexual experiences. That tends to sort of release that energy downwards and outwards, right? Whereas in terms of this word higher consciousness, quite literally, we can see that this sexual energy is being raised higher to higher energy centers in our body, upwards, up the spinal column, upwards towards the heart, towards the head. Towards the heart, it can invoke immense love. Bliss can flow through our entire system. In the head, it can invoke these experiences of, white light, golden light, expanded states of meditation, expanded states of consciousness, higher states of consciousness. So it's this sexual energy that gets transmuted, that gets sublimated into being spiritual energy. So the way that I like to think about it is that it's not exactly just sexual energy, it's energy, it's Shakti, and Shakti can be expressed and manifest in so many different ways. One of them being sexual, one of them being, of course, spiritual, creative energy as well. It's all synonymous. It's all one real energy, just expresses itself in so many unique ways. So as we go through this process, we are going through a spiritual evolution, right? We are evolving. So what does that mean? We're evolving to some sort of higher order, some sort of higher order of being. And so one way of looking at it is that rather than being, just mundane sort of biological creatures, animals, if you will, we're moving towards something of a spiritual nature. So that same energy is now moving upwards and is bringing about experiences that aren't just to do with biological reproduction or sexual pleasure. So much more spiritual pleasure, spiritual expansion, you could say. So this is a known thing. Enjoy whatever's arising without attachment, knowing that if at any point this ceases, the experience can become very sort of dry compared to these incredible blissful orgasmic experiences. If this happens, know that it may be just another challenge arising on the path to help you to work through any attachment. Know that if it ceases, it's not that anything is going wrong per se. It's not that you're doing anything wrong per se. With that said, however, there are some things we can do to sort of sustain these higher states of consciousness, which are, of course, the traditional spiritual practices, meditation, mindfulness. Some will move in towards celibacy, meaning they want to retain that sexual energy within and work towards drawing it towards higher energy centers. So celibacy can be quite effective for that sort of thing. Eating the right foods for us, which varies for everybody, but generally speaking, high vibratory foods, foods that are filled with prana, with life force, with vitality, right? So you can think about that as well. Some visualizations can help to sort of draw this energy upwards. Some breath work can draw this energy upwards, though you don't have to engage in anything consciously to do that. It can happen spontaneously, like as it is happening for you, Lisa. Spontaneously, it's happening, and that's great. But for those listening who are wondering, how can we sort of move towards these experiences, there are some practices you can do. I generally don't recommend them because sometimes they can stir up the sexual energy to these higher energy centers a little bit too quickly or somewhat prematurely, which can cause a lot of experiences of being ungrounded, being a little too heightened and a little unstable. But there's so many different ways of working with the sexual energy in this way, or should I say, just the energy in general. I have this book here on my desk. I just grabbed it from the thrift store, actually. It's called The Mystery of the Golden Flower. And this is The Mystery of the Golden Flower, Sacred Sexuality and Liberation from Suffering by Samael On Weor. So I haven't read it, so it might not be good, but I picked it up because it looked pretty good and promising. And it breaks down from many different spiritual traditions all of the ways that the sexual energy is used to fuel spiritual transformation, spiritual development, spiritual evolution. So these themes are throughout the world, throughout all traditions, it's there. This is why celibacy, things like that are within religious traditions, right? Approaching sexuality in a certain way. But of course, those teachings get watered down and we're shamed for it as if it's a sin. But really, the original intention was, if we approach our sexuality with a particular consciousness, we could, move towards being connected with God, not because it was a sin. But of course, the more bigger the audience, the more watered down the message becomes. I've completely lost the other parts of your question, Lisa. Maybe you can remind me,
Sure.
or if you
Thank you
have
for
any follow-up.
no, that was great. I was just, does the Kundalini help move us into a higher consciousness? I know that there's the ascension um, taking place globally, and I know I've been feeling those ascension symptoms big time. But what I've also noticed is that my mental body has been nonstop in a particular area of my life where I feel that I have been able to release, but it's my egoic mind that's having a tough time embracing the fact that, whatever was a relationship that no longer serves me. And the egoic mind is just, you could have done this, you could have done that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, blah, 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 blah. And it just seems to get louder and louder. And I was just wondering if the Kundalini helps with getting us into a higher consciousness and helps us release those negative thoughts. I mean, I do watch those thoughts go by, but sometimes, obviously, the mental mind just is a lot stronger than, what I would like.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was just wondering if Kundalini does help with all of that rewiring of the brain and the thought processes, whatnot.
Yes, certainly. So one way of looking at it is that whatever's arising throughout this process is arising to be released, purged, cleansed, purified, exhausted. So when thoughts are coming up, we can look at it as if something going wrong, but the other way of looking at it is something going right, because these thoughts have been lying dormant. Their emotional roots have been lying dormant. So now the Kundalini activates, it stirs it up so it can come to the forefront of our awareness. And if we observe it with just objectivity, with detachment without becoming identified, we allow it to dissipate. And that is the release. The thoughts coming up is the releasing of those thoughts. And of course, that is what brings us to a higher state of consciousness, a higher vibratory state, by letting go of the weights, the heavy weights that keep us down, right? So that's one way of looking at it.